Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products.
Welcome, everyone. This is the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast for June 9th, 2021. Welcome, everyone. We have really nice guests today slated to talk about another Microsoft security product, which I'm absolutely excited to hear about because this is not one of my areas. So I'm actually most interested in this to learn a lot about it. But anyway, I'll turn it back to Frank. Frank, you want to kick us off with something fantastic and interesting?
That'll be next week when Edward's back and we get to hear about his race. So that will be the episode not to miss for sure. So we have Rod Trent sitting in and Brodie C sitting in for that's his name on Zoom. So sitting in for Edward. We need two people to replace Edward. How are you doing, Brodie?
That's fantastic. Living the dream. How about yourself, Frank and Rod?
Great. So, do anything good this week in the Microsoft security world? Did you learn anything new this week?
Yeah, finishing up. Other than I went on a golf trip, that was great. Had a great time. But yeah, Microsoft security. I'm finishing up a compliance project. It sounds like I'll be starting a Azure Defender project upcoming here. And as Edward alluded to, he's really interested in insider risk management on the compliance side. And it looks like I have a gig coming up in the next few months that will tackle that topic. So some really interesting engagements coming up, and yeah, just having a blast at Microsoft. Things are good.
And Rod, did you learn anything this past week?
What did I learn? Yeah, I learn something new every day. I was just trying to think something most interesting. Develop some guidance around the segmenting the different user accounts, or at least user access for the UBA and Azure Sentinel this week, which we literally had no guidance around that, and customers are kind of interested. Personal security, I would say I learned this week that when you go past a tree full of cicadas, you want to run and not walk, because they will attach themselves to you. It's actually easy to catch these things. You just kind of stand there for a little bit and you get like 10 that jump all over you. So
so you did catch that cicada yourself?
Oh yeah, I catch these things. Yeah, okay. They don't scare me. They scare my family, which is why. So yeah, I have something special to do, I guess, at the end of this podcast. But the reason why I want to save it to the end is because I have to wait for my family to exit the house. They're getting ready to go to church, and I don't, if I carry that thing in here screaming, they'll all scream and leave. So,
yeah, fortunately, my dogs have not been eating them, but you have to understand, people don't understand how many shells are at the bottom of your trees, right? I mean, basically these things come out of the shell or whatever. Then you end up with like 4, inches deep of these cicada shells. So you remember in the Terminator when they're like walking over all the skulls and they're like cracking, that sort of thing? That's exactly what it's like, going out there, walking over all these cicada shells out there, and they are extremely loud. So yeah. All right. So Rod, you've been picking our guests for the past few weeks. Who do we have tonight?
So I'm just going to do it this way. I want to have him introduce himself. He's a product manager, and they obviously do that. The reason why I want him to do that is because I'm severely afraid of mispronouncing his first name. And I hate to botch those things and make people feel bad. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, and you can introduce yourself.
That sounds good. So my first name is Yoann, like Johan, but without the H. That's just the French spelling of it. You can hear to my accent that I'm definitely not American. Everybody thinks I'm Israeli, but I'm not, because I work in security with a bunch of Israelis, of course. But so no, I'm French, and this is a French sounding name that just makes a lot of sense. So yes, Yoann, you got it, Rod.
So here's why I'm so afraid of that, right? I went to like 5 or 6 different websites to type your first name in for those pronunciations, and they were all wrong. Okay, so I'm just like, and they were all different. I'm going, there's no way I can No way.
Yeah. That's the thing with foreign first name. I should have trusted my wife and just used my middle name when I arrived in America 11 years ago now. David. That's just, international. That works out.
Yeah.
But one more time, I didn't follow her advice, and I regret it every time I didn't. So anyway, we'll talk about that another day. But let me introduce myself quickly. So Yoann Mallet. I've been at Microsoft 14 years now. Wow, that just goes very fast. Every time I'm impressed every time I say it. And I've been working in a lot of different areas. In the first part of my career, mostly in Active Directory, and you'll understand why it's important in a minute. And in the past 2 years, I've been focusing on the security part of things. So I work with two awesome products. I work with Cloud App Security, but you already heard too much about this last week with my dear friend Sarazin. And I also work with Microsoft Defender for Identity. And that's what we're going to talk about the most today. So a Microsoft Defender for Identity is something I've been working with in the past few years. Before that, I worked with another product called ATA, Azure Advanced Threat Analytics, which is basically an on-prem version of this awesome cloud product that is MDI, Microsoft Defender for Identity. If the name doesn't ring any bell, it's because we rebranded this product a few months back. It used to be Azure ATP just a few months ago. So now it's called Microsoft Defender for Identity, or MDI. So you're all going to wonder, what does it do? I'm sure that's the main question you're asking. And so MDI is a solution that is here to help you secure your on-prem identities, not just your. We've been talking about the cloud like crazy in the past few years, and that's where everybody puts their focus. Cloud, making sure your identity in the cloud is secure. Of course, your applications in the cloud are secure. You talked about this last week. Your resources in the cloud with Azure Security Center and all those awesome products we have. But we forget that most organizations now, at least the biggest one, I've seen a few small ones that don't have so much of an on-prem footprint, but most orgs still have their identities on-prem. Frank, Brodie, Rod, you can share your experience, but I'm sure you've seen that as well. So most people have AD, Active Directory, not Azure AD, plain good old 20-year-old AD, more than 20 years old now. So it's a great product. I mean, it works well. This is why there has been some good improvement in the past 20 years, but the core has not changed. The core is the same. Somebody who learned AD 20 years ago, like I did when I was in the computer school, you can still get by with the skills you had 20 years ago today. So that's a very solid technology, and it's still very much in use right now. And the fact that there is all this shift to the cloud, this unfortunately has a lot of people forget about how important it is to make sure you secure your identities on-prem. So this is what we're trying to do with Microsoft Defender for Identity, and for that we have a number of things. So the most important thing we try to do is really alert when there are some suspicious behaviors. So I'm sure among the listeners here we have people who are familiar with what our French friend does with Mimikatz, when you can do pass the ticket. I'm French too, so I can tease him with doing easy pass the hash or easy golden ticket, all those fun things. Of course, you have an idea of how much of these we have seen in real life scenarios, customers being completely owned by these kind of attacks, by these kind of tools, and we really wanted to do something to protect against that. So this is what MDI is going to try to do to the core. We're going to help our customers detect these kind of very advanced attacks on Active Directory, and for that we go with not just those very visible or known attacks, but also the entire kill chain. We try to help our customers with from the moment the attackers try to get into the environment, when they try to escalate their privileges, to when they try to just assert their domain dominance. And that's, of course, we hope we never get there, but if we do, we have a way to detect that. So that's really, in terms of layer, how we progress our detections and how we're trying to help our customers review how those attacks are happening and what potential attackers would be doing.
So how do attacker, or can you explain how, in 2 minutes, explain how Kerberos works?
So it's a good point. So I'm a bit rusty on this one, but I'll do it. I have not done some real detailed AD work in the past few years, but let's do that. So the idea of Kerberos is the same idea as a lot of things in security, where we always want to have a third party certifying authentication. You and I can talk, and we can have our own key to talk. But how do I know that when I receive a key, you are the one who sent me the key to send you an encrypted message? That I don't know. So this is why this is the same idea of a certificate in the whole concept, but trying to get a third party, which is going to be this authority, this Kerberos entity, trying to help put some kind of intermediate, some kind of certification that the communication between us is secure, and whatever key I get is going to be the right way. So in Kerberos, it works a bit, of course, a lot differently than what it is in the certificate area, and the way I mean, this is the core protocol for AD. So the way AD is going to work is that when you want to authenticate to a resource on your network, like your local computer, you would connect to a domain controller. That domain controller will give you a ticket, and through that ticket, it identifies that you are the person you claim to be. So that when you go to this to the resource you want to access, then you can request access, and in that case request another type of ticket to access, not only to prove your identity, but to have the right to access the resource. So that's the on one foot, that's the idea of what Kerberos does, and how we use that to authenticate users who access different kind of resources in AD.
So if somebody gets their ticket local, then how does MDI work, knowing that, hey, this person's already got their ticket? You don't really have control after that. So how does MDI find this stuff?
Excellent question. So how does it work? Basically, MDI requires the installation of what we call a sensor. It's basically a glorified agent, if you wanna say it this way, but it's much more than a simple agent. It's a bit more involved, the work that it does, but it's something you have to install on your domain controllers, and it will intercept a few interesting pieces of data. Number one, the network traffic. That's the main source of MDI. It will check what's happening at the wire level. So even if something is not logged in your event log, if it's something that is not captured, or even if somebody comes and tries to instantly erase some logs, we don't really care. We have the basic data at the network level. Once it goes through the wire, it goes through the wire. We captured it. So that's the number one source. Of course, on top of that, we capture some logs, but it's not the main part. So even if somebody tampers with the logs, we would still get enough data to identify some of the alerts. We'd probably be missing some things, but in general, we're fast enough from the correlation of what we find at the wire to what we get in the logs, so that it would become a moot point and nobody could tamper the logs in that time frame. So that's how we gather the data. We also obviously get information on the Active Directory, because we're on the domain controller. We have access to AD. We know the identities. We can correlate IDs very fast. So that's how we get the data, and we are able from that to detect a bunch of things.
And I'm looking up something right now, so that's why I'm getting into the portals right now, so I can ask you some questions about the portals.
All the portals.
There's so many portals right now. The question of the portal is a question in and of itself. Yeah. Which portal should you go to? And that's the main question.
So I want to come back and do a little bit deeper discussion, but the first thing I want to ask you is, inside MCAS, there's this thing called the Identity Security Posture. Can you tell me about that?
I can certainly tell you about that. So I'm gonna roll back. Keep that idea handy. I'm gonna give you a bit of history on our products so that it's clear for everybody, and we know how these things how this why you have to go to MCAS to have something about MDI. So about a couple years ago, maybe it's 18 months, 2 years ago, we heard our customers, and we understood that our customers are just fed up of having 20 different portals for 20 different security products. I see Brodie is smiling, so you agree. You've heard that from our customers as well. I'm sure you have. So for those on the stream, we heard you, and we are still working on this. This is still a work in progress. This is not something that is done overnight. So because MCAS is it is a great product. I mean, I work with that a lot every day, so I know it's a great product. It has very, very and for anybody who's connected to the MCAS interface, one of the things you'll see is the how granular the filters are is just amazing. You can filter based on almost anything. You have an activity log that is very well conceived. So we figured that using that engine and putting data from MDI into MCAS was a great idea. And that's why we decided that the investigation experience for MDI should be in MCAS, which means that at this point, so that was about a year and a half ago, we sent all the data from MDI to MCAS, which means except for the configuration, you don't really need to go to this legacy MDI portal. You can do all your investigation work from MCAS, and you have another great page called the Identity Security Posture page, and the idea of that page is to help you not only go with reactive results but also with proactive information. So we all know that it's just much better if we avoid having our customers compromised rather than telling them, hey, you've been compromised. So to do that, we Brodie, I like when you agree with me. So we've been we introduced that section, and for me it's critical. I tell all my customers, just before you look into the alerts, look into that part, because that's where you're going to avoid having any alert. You don't want any alert. You want to proactively review what is not configured according to best practices in your environment. So I give you a couple examples of things we see in that page. You can see, for example, if some accounts have clear text credentials going through the wire, for example, using LDAP Simple Bind. It will tell you which accounts. It will not tell you the passwords, but technically it sees the passwords because we're listening to the traffic over the wire. We're just not showing them up in the interface because that would be stupid if we did that. But we have the list of accounts that have their password in clear text. We can tell you if some machines are not using LAPS, the add-on that helps customers have their local passwords being randomized rather than being all the same on all the machines like we used to see about 15-20 years ago when I started my career. So that's the kind of things we are. These are two examples. If we open the page, I can tell you a lot more that we have. But
so there's one called Unsecure Kerberos Delegation. What's that?
So Kerberos Delegation. That's that's a setting that you can configure to usually for some legacy applications that would require to have some kind of so what we call delegation is the ability to connect to one machine and then being able to jump from have your tickets being delegated to access other resources. So in that case, that can be unsecure, and this is a setting you can enable per entity, per user, per machine, and not a good idea to have that enabled. Usually we see a few legacy applications that require it, but thankfully less and less. So we recommend that that this becomes disabled, and that's one of the things we are looking into.
Yeah. You can share your screen if you'd like. I mean, I'll be happy to pass that over to you.
Let me do that. Yeah, I'll show you quickly. I have the. I figured you would ask these kind of questions, so I had this interface actually open before we started talking.
People warned you about me. Is that the
Yes, they did.
All right, I made you the host, so you should be able to share.
Sounds good. Give me.
I know you Microsoft people don't understand how to use Zoom. We'll give you a few minutes.
Yeah. Actually, how do we do that?
At the bottom of the screen, there will be a share screen.
No, I got it. I just figured out how to share my. I have the privilege of having 3 different screens. That's the perfect home office and the best home office in the world. So let me zoom that out because I've heard the feedback that sometimes it's a bit too small. Okay, so that's the identity security posture. It gives you a good idea of some of the best practice you should cover. So some legacy communication protocols, clear text credential exposure. That's probably one of the most critical ones because it's just so simple that it just gets overlooked very often. In most customers' environment, we don't see 2 here, rather 200, 2,000. Or more than that. It's just that here we probably have about 2 users, or maybe more, but we don't have. It's a test environment. It's just a lab that we use for demos.
So our legacy protocol would be like SMBV something, or what?
Yes, it could be, or it could be also legacy encryption for your for authentication.
How about just anything on premises? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
How about just anything on premises? I'm just
kidding. Well, yeah. We wish we would get there, but we're not there yet. We will get there. I mean, side note, but this is a discussion we're having with customers. How soon they think they will get out of their on-prem environment? Do they think it's going to happen in the next few weeks, months? So far, we've heard mostly years and a few years. Like before 5 years, I don't see that this product will be out of business. After, probably it will start slowing down, and we'll have some large organization, maybe the more conservative side of the market will still stay on on-prem, while for a little while. But we shall see. I don't want to start predicting the future because I'm probably going to be wrong again.
So will all of this move into the unified portal at some point?
Yes, it will. Okay. Give me a few minutes.
Okay.
But yeah, it will.
Oh my goodness! You're going to do it while we're talking?
Sorry?
I said, can we have exact dates when that will happen? Just kidding.
It's another problem, but no, this is probably our priority right now. Everything on the MDI side will move to the unified portal, the Microsoft 365 Defender portal, and yeah, so that page will go. The alerts are already there. You can already investigate your alerts from this unified portal, and the configuration is coming. We have private previews right now, so a few customers are piloting it, but it's not finalized yet. So just to finish on this page before we move on to your this question, Frank. So you see the best practices we're trying to detect here. So I discussed labs a little bit. If you are missing sensors on some of your domain controllers, we can tell you that. If you have things as basic as the print spooler on DCs that is enabled, why would you need to print anything from a DC? Unfortunately, this is often done, and we've seen cases where if there is any kind of vulnerability that is identified there, customer would get hacked. Just a good idea to see which DCs have been fully secured, fully hardened, or not. So that's the kind of things. Question on these?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. So yeah, following your, I'm going to stop sharing right now, but.
Oh, you can keep sharing if you want. I mean.
That's what I had for now, but maybe through the questions I'll share them a couple more times. But right. Yes, our goal to respond to your question, our goal is to go through this unified portal as soon as possible. I'm not going to provide any dates, but we are working very hard on this. I wouldn't do that, especially in a public forum, because I don't want you
we
guys
always try to get people in trouble with the product teams.
I don't want you guys to come
That's our entire goal
in,
is to get people in trouble with their
No,
product
we
teams.
want your
I don't want you guys to come in 6 months with the recording and tell me, Yoann, you were wrong. We're gonna try to avoid that. So we're working on this, and this is one of our key efforts right now, because we heard our customers. Number one, it's boring. You don't want to spend your time switching it between portals. Number two, if we don't do it, we're missing the whole correlation piece.
Right.
So if we see that John Doe gets, has a pass the hash attack, it would be very interesting to correlate that with, there's a malware that looks like Mimikatz on the machine. And that gives you a good idea when you can correlate those two that, no, this is not a false positive. This is a big deal. You need to do something about it. So that's an example of why we think it's very important, why it's so priority.
I think I'll doing one episode is to do one of the hack the box Active Directory boxes where you're using Bloodhound to go through and identify the path and so on. So that should be interesting to do. So when something bad happens, this alert gets thrown out to the MCAS portal. Is there automation where it's like, hey, listen, this is bad, let's automatically block this person's account? Does that also block their account if it's a hybrid identity? How is that managed when an alert comes up, an incident comes up, and what automation can you do behind that to help with the situation?
So the goal of MDI in the first place is to say read only, which means you will have to go manually through and investigate the user and then take action. In MCAS, we added the ability to have some kind of when you're in MCAS, you have the ability to have some actions that are done. In some cases where you can disable an account, but MCAS only has the ability to disable an account in Azure AD, not back on-prem. So at the end of the day, it is very, very important, as of now at least, to do the investigation piece manually after there is a detection. So you really want to make sure that you have the data being sent. If you need to send it to a SIM or an email or whatever that is for notification, it's something that we usually recommend as part of the regular SOC actions. I would personally not necessarily recommend to just disable automatically every account that have an alert, because you would probably have a few people screaming once in a while. So maybe avoid that. But the investigation is critical, because it will allow you to detect what's happening really. Is it a true positive, false positive, number one? And also you don't necessarily want to automatically disable accounts when things happen. You sometimes want to monitor them to view if it's really a malicious activity or not. Even if it's a malicious activity, I can give you examples where if we disabled accounts too fast, hackers were able to just launch some kind of a wrecking ball malware and break the environment completely to erase their tracks. So sometimes it's not necessarily the mainstream case, but sometimes in any case, you want to do the investigation on your own. I would not trust a robot or an automated action to do it fully right now. There's always, as of today, we want to have some kind of manual investigation for these kind of things.
So how noisy is it from like alerts generator? Or like, if you get 10 alerts, 8 of them are going to be real, 2 of them. I mean, how noisy do you see this, and how many false positives? It
depends. It depends on where you are where you're at in your deployment phase. So most customers, when you just turn it on, they will see the whole thing lighting up like a Christmas tree, and having a bunch of alerts. That's very common for any security solution. So what you usually need to do is look at these and put the proper exceptions, the proper exclusions in your config, because there are cases that we know are going to look like attacks but are not, and you want to put exceptions for that. So I'll give you one example. We have a detection called suspicious replication. So if we see that there is a machine that is not a domain controller trying to trigger replication like a domain controller. So that's not a good. If it happens, it's not a good thing.
I know the attack well.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not a good thing if it happens, but it turns out the same process is triggered by Azure AD Connect when you're syncing up your AD to Azure AD. So most customers nowadays, because most customers are hybrid, I don't see a lot of customers that are on-prem only as of today. Most customers, they see that as their first alert, or in the first couple days of your of installing MDI. So yeah, we tell customers it's fine, just put that as an exclusion, and you'll stop having this kind of detection. We're also doing a lot of things proactively, which means you don't have to do any. Customers don't have to do anything. We're still helping with limiting the number of false positive. One of the things we do is that we have a lot of learning period for those alerts. I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, we didn't have that, and we added it. There is a detection called DNS reconnaissance. If you are doing a zone transfer, we will, and if it's not from an authorized DNS server, it probably somebody trying to just do some reconnaissance information from a machine, and just get information about a network, which are the main servers, which IPs I should ping, etc. So a few years back, we did not have learning methods in that. There's a zone transfer, we trigger, and it was as simple as that. More recently, we added a learning phase for that, which means from the moment you install MDI, in the past, I think this one has a 5-day learning period. I may be wrong, but I think it's 5 days. We will profile where zone transfer queries come from, and we will see what's usual. And after that learning period, if there are things that come out of the ordinary, that's when we start triggering. And that really helps limit the number of false positives. So that's an example. A lot of our detections have this kind of profiling to avoid false positive. That being said, yes, it happens. It does happen. I can't give you any kind of statistics on what kind of false positive we see, what kind of true positive we see. We also have a number of most of the alerts hopefully are benign true positives, which means they do trigger for a real reason, but it's not necessarily a malicious reason. There's a good reason for MDI to trigger and to let the admin know, but it's not. There's no actual malicious intent behind the action that we see. So that's very common. We hear the term false positive very often. I prefer to focus on trying to reduce the benign true positive in general, because there are much more of these than there are real false positive.
Reducing the noise, very important.
It's at the end of the day, it can look like noise for customers, but it is important that we trigger these as well as of now.
Right. And just pulling the thread on the management of MDI, what in your opinion, what's the most complicated part of managing the solution?
So it's a very straightforward deployment usually, and the management goes the same way. So what I usually see for most customers, the challenge is that you're going to have, it happens mostly for large organizations. If you're a small shop, you have 5 DCs, and the same person does AD administration, security, and SOC, then it's easy. One person is going to go and install the sensors and then review the alerts, and that's it. Most medium to large organizations, they're going to have an AD team. They're going to have probably an Azure AD team, and they're going to have a security engineering team. So the moment from the moment you request access to the moment to be able to install those sensors, to the moment they are actually deployed and deployed properly, there can be some challenges. So my personal experience is that when I see organizations that are that have good a good synergy between their teams, deployment and management goes very smoothly. When you have dysfunctions within the teams, unfortunately, it happens everywhere. I won't talk about us, but it does happen in a lot of organizations. Political fights, things like that. My experience is that's the worst thing you can see for an MDI deployment. You need to make sure that the different teams that will take care of that deployment, or in agreement that this is critical for the security of the environment. And if they don't do it, they're going to get pawned at some point, and we don't want to do that. It used to be worse than that, to be honest. In our first iterations in the product we called ATA, you could not install the sensor on the domain controller. It had to be a separate box. So that's good, but that separate box had to have port mirroring to it. You still have this option available in MDI, though we don't recommend it. So trying to get AD plus network plus security engineering to all work together, that was sometimes a bit challenging in terms of management. Right now, it's one less team in the equation, but there's still a few organizational challenges that I see. To finish responding to your question on the more technical side rather than the organizational side, I've seen cases where you want to be very careful about the kind of communication that happens between the sensors and the cloud service. So that's just at a technical level, but very often when we see problems and when we have cases open with our colleagues at support, it's because the prereqs were not properly followed. So network ports is number one probably, but missing software could be the wrong version of the .NET frameworks installed, things like that. That I've seen that causing issues in the past.
Thank you.
So one of the things I found interesting was that a security researcher a few years ago, I think, did a presentation at Black Hat. I don't know if you saw that report or not.
Maybe not. I don't know.
So what was really nice about the report was how much he did find things to improve in the product, but he really said that the ATA team at the time was really helpful and listened and worked with them on the whole thing. So when I hear that collaboration with the security community, I think that's going to strengthen the product. Do you know if this is? I've got a few things here. Do you know if this is available in any of the Gov clouds?
I know we were working on this. I don't know if we actually published it. By the end of that webinar, by the time Rod is busy eating a cicada, I'll look that up and tell you.
All right. The next thing that I have is, as Rod calls it now, the entity behavior analytics. Where do you see that in the unified portal versus Sentinel with the Defender for identity information?
So it's a very broad question. So part of the entity behavior analytics that you're mentioning is what I discussed a few minutes ago when we talked about just profiling, and this is something that MDI does as part of its core engine. So it's there, it's built in, and it's part of the product. And that part of the product works so well that when we decided to add some entity behavior analytics in Azure Sentinel, it's actually the same team that started working on it. So they first used at the time the ATA and Azure ATP team before we rebranded the product, and making sure that we have some similarity. It explains why we have some similarities in those engines. That being said, I'm not really an expert with Sentinel. You guys probably have more background on it than I do, so I can't speak more of the technical implications or details behind it.
So just to follow up on that, so how MDI is tied into MCAS, is that what provides the entity behavior analytics for MCAS? Is it MDI, or is that very similar as well?
MCAS has had its own entity behavior analytics before MDI integrated with it. So, and also these are very, very different detections. So the same entity behavior analytics doesn't necessarily apply. The researchers are working very closely together. They're very often, you can see, this guy left this team and went to this one. This is very common at Microsoft for those who are watching us, but that really helps us making sure that we have this very uniform kind of methodologies between our products. So the engines are not necessarily the same, but they're developed by the same research teams, and they're both robust, but each have different, very different use cases.
Yeah, that's interesting because somebody actually had that discussion with a customer today, and so I'm glad, just very timely, because in Sentinel we do UEBA for just by creating new tables based on some sources, some of the sources and things like that, and so but it's interesting that it's the same team, so that's awesome.
So do you have like an investigation page inside MCAS that we can see?
So let me do that. Yep. Let me open the right page, and I'll share it in like a few seconds.
I'm going to step away while you're doing that. Be right back with something.
Bye, okay, Rod. Good for you, man.
Yoann, while you're pulling that up, one of your colleagues asked me to ask you a question. Might be loaded. So, in your opinion, what should customers deploy first, considering equal licensing, MDI or MCAS?
I challenge you not to do both in the same day.
Good answer.
If you ask me, you get me. Like, I'll do 2-hour meetings. I'll do both in the same day. At least the start. Not everything, but at least the start. So that's what I would say. Honestly, like more seriously, it really depends on the customer. Depending on the environment, what's more critical to them. Do they have more concerns on what's happening at the identity level on-prem or on the clouds? That's what I would say. But both of these are very, very simple to deploy. MDI, all you need to do is technically just put sensors on your DCs, and that's it. And MCAS, you need to connect your apps. Once you connect your apps, you already have some level of protections without doing anything else. Of course, there's a lot of things you can and should do to go much deeper, but at least the basics you can do very fast.
So is this we're looking at the alerts page. Is this just the standard MCAS alerts page that
this is the standard alerts page. So just to show you here, I applied one filter, and I filtered on the application. I chose the application called Active Directory. When I do that, so all the apps that are related to the alerts are filtered to only AD. AD means it comes from MDI, from Defender for Identity. So you can see all these beautiful alerts. I don't think there's a lot right now in this test environment, but you can see some honey token and some account enumeration reconnaissance. Really, some of the basics. So then you can open.
Do you have a lateral movement in here?
I don't think I have one in this environment. And so here you can see what happened. I can tell by the name of that machine that we're missing some events in the event log on that domain controller. It's probably misconfigured, but that's fine. It's just a lab. Nobody's actually getting hacked here. And you can see the number of guest accounts were actually compromised. You can export the details, just like you can export the detail in the legacy portal. You will get the same here.
Okay, so normally you have this visual, I believe, further down.
Yeah,
right?
not in this page. Let me see here. Probably this one has a bit more. Yeah, probably not the right environment for this kind of ad hoc demo. But if you wanted to see the visual, I can show you that. We'll probably see it from the legacy portal here. That's what you had in mind, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that kind of visual, I think I like it as well because I think it's very graphical. It shows you, okay, that's the source, that's the DC that was involved, and where we detected the issue. Remember, we're detecting everything from the DCs. We installed the sensors mostly on the DCs. Very recently, we added the ability to install sensors on ADFS servers, but other than that, no client, no member server will have the sensor. So everything we detect comes from either a DC or potentially an ADFS server.
Cool. Yoann, the deployment, it's pretty straightforward. Do you get pushback from customers with regards to any type of the installation or how the data is transmitted, to the central reporting system?
Excellent question. Excellent. Every time you talk about the cloud and storing data in the cloud, we talk about we have the risk of having some kind of regulations that would prevent the data from going out. So so yes, we have these kind of questions. We have everything that is here goes into our that we send to the cloud is described in our official privacy policy. So there's nothing really specific to MDI on that, but we do capture a lot of data. So that's a question we get on a very regular basis. In summary, we kind of capture the same thing as you sync up with Azure AD. So whatever you sync up with Azure AD is also the kind of data we are syncing up using MDI. It syncs up separately. It doesn't use the data synced up by Azure AD for two reasons. Number one, you can use MDI without Azure AD. Number two, if somebody tweaks the sync up data with Azure AD, we may we would be missing data. So we do it twice, but it's fine. We can handle the load of that, and we get that data from environments. But as I said, it's about the same thing as what customers already sync up with Azure AD.
Thank you.
So if you go to microsoft.com/learn, there's a Defender for Identity module out there that they do the interactive guide for walking through. It's in the SC200 courseware also. So people that are not, if they want to go through an entire investigation and so on, it's the interactive guide is really good to go through without having to go through all the setup. Even though the Learn modules and the docs online give you the entire use case scenario to go through, but the interactive guide works really well for learning the entire process to go through.
I'll be transparent with you. I didn't even know we had this thing, but that's great.
Great.
Yeah, no, it's the interactive guide. When I was looking at doing the labs, I'm like the setup and configuration time to do all that wasn't worth it versus just putting them in the interactive guide and seeing it in action from there. All right, so I have to ask you the standard question that we ask everyone.
Okay.
So you've got a new customer, 200 desktops. They get their M365 E5 license. Of course, they have Active Directory. They're doing the sync between Azure Active Directory, and they say, okay, we need to roll out the security products. Which one should we do first? Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Office 365, Identity, or MCAS? You have to choose one. Which one would you tell them to do first?
Well, I'm gonna tell you MDI, of course, but I don't think most realistically, they would usually be different teams doing everything, and so I see those work streams being usually happening in parallel. I've worked with a lot of customers where I'm going to handle MCAS and MDI at the same time, just different teams. They don't even talk to each other. They don't even know each other at the beginning. Then they realize they have to work together because those products integrate. Very
so you can still only choose one.
But
we don't let people off the hook. I mean, we get the political answers all the time, so.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you it depends. If they have a strong cloud, let me.
Of course.
I'm going to tell you why it depends and which decision tree I would pick. So if they have a strong on-prem presence and most of their apps are going to be on-prem and there are a lot of legacy things, of course you're going to go with MDI. MDI and probably MD soon after or before.
Okay.
If it's like one of those awesome startups that have a very small on-prem presence, go with MCAS because that's where your data is going to be mostly, and that's what you're going to care about mostly. So that's my very quick decision tree that I just made in the past 30 seconds. But that's how I would usually try to make the decision. Not one size fit all, but find out depending on what's the customer environment, what's the customer need.
So
yeah, it's an ongoing thing. But my thing is this: is if they put in Defender for Endpoint, what's the level of effort to spin up MCAS after that?
Defender for Endpoint doesn't. I mean, it has some integration with MCAS, but it has nothing to do with the setup. So the setup for MCAS is completely separate. So it's really whichever order you choose is going to be the same effort. Doesn't make a difference.
All right. Any other questions here? You guys are way too quiet.
Well, a couple.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll start with one. So what's the future for MDI? Obviously, we have a lot of customers who are still kind of doing this hybrid, or some that are still on-prem. What is the future for MDI? Obviously, we have identity for Azure Active Directory identity protection.
Yep.
Is this going to tie together somehow, or and what additional capability can we expect?
So the future right now, I think we discussed it a little bit, but the main thing we are working on is the big evolution is having everything in this unified portal. We don't want to have different portals. That changes everything, not just in terms of it's simpler for customers, but rather it's going to be an easier investigation experience. It's going to be just a much simpler thing to configure. So the way I see the future is this one portal and a lot of different signals building into it, including configuration that will be happening from that portal. That's where we are going right now. On top of that, very, very regularly we add new detections to MDI. So when we see new issues, we just or new known vulnerabilities, we do our best to add them into the product. So we had a few added in the last few months. That's something we try to do on a regular basis.
Was that documented anywhere?
We often have. I don't have the link handy, but we often push blogs when there's a new detection, especially when it's something that everybody's talking about.
Yeah, and that's interesting because we hear a lot about Defender detections. We hear a lot about Azure Sentinel new detections and new threat intel that's fed in, but we rarely hear about the Defender for Identity stuff, I think.
Yeah, well, they're coming steadily. Every time there's something new, we get them coming. The thing is, in AD, there's a lot of things that have happened a long time ago, and it's maybe not the area where you're going to see the most new vulnerabilities today, because it's a product that is 20 years old. So a lot of things have been discovered already, but it happens. I forgot the name, but there was something a few months back. We just a few weeks after the product was the vulnerability was identified, there was something new in the product. So we're working hard on that.
Yeah.
All right. So he's getting the food ready there.
Hey,
so
get off of me. Stop it.
I've never seen one. I've only heard about them on the news.
You've only seen one.
I have not seen one either. I live in the city, so.
Oh my goodness, he's already taken off all the pieces.
Oh, poor thing. Is it
Nice
still
plate,
alive?
man.
It's still alive. It's just it can't fly now and it can't walk away. So.
Oh, that's screaming. What you hear in the background was him peeling the legs off. So I'm kind of confused about where should I be investigating these sort of alerts, and let's say when it gets to the unified portal, am I going to Sentinel for this, or am I going to the Defender portal? I'm kind of confused. This is
excellent question.
Rod
So
crazy.
most of the time, I would say that you would go to Sentinel for the initial notification. Most SOCs are going to have one portal, and most of the time it's going to be the SIM. So in our world, the SIM is going to be Sentinel. So that's going to be your first stop, and then you can go to this the unified portal, and you can investigate much more in depth, not only with the MDI alerts, but with the other ones that will be correlated.
So I'm seeing some training out there that's trying to take all of this data and push it out to an external SIM, so then they can have everything centralized for everything else that they're doing.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that, or do you feel that they're losing too much by pushing this data out and not being inside the different portals that Microsoft provides?
So it depends. Again, I've seen a lot of customers using, I don't know, our favorite competitors, Splunk, ArcSight. I can't remember which ones as well, but there's a bunch of SIEMs out there. And it's fine in terms of functionality, but of course, I mean, in terms of syncing up all the events, that's good. But in terms of investigation, usually those SIEMs are very good to help you getting some kind of a notification. So you see that there is an alert, and then you have to go to another portal to investigate it. You're not going to be able to go through the entire investigation from those portal. That's something you would rather do from the unified portal, where you will see, number one, the alerts, but you will also be able to run some KQL queries, find out any corresponding relevant entities to the alert that just happened, and even better, correlate those alerts between among different products. MDE, MDI, MDO, MCAS, all those things. So that's the idea. I would usually see the SIEM as a good notifier, and then the unified portal as a good investigation playground.
All right, are we ready for for dinner here?
Well, I'm supposed to have dinner right after, so I may pass actually. Now that I've seen the whole, the poor thing completely. Paralyzed. I don't know.
Dismembered live on camera. Yeah.
So I have cicada sauce.
It's really called cicada sauce?
No, it's Chick-fil-A sauce, but you literally put this sauce on anything.
So I've heard of a lot of people eating either grasshoppers, lobsters, and they're full of, what I've heard is they're full of protein, but they usually roast them and salt them. And from what I'm not going to taste any of these things, but from what I've heard, it gives a better taste. I don't know.
Well, so I used to. It's been a while, but I used to travel back and forth to China quite a bit. I've literally eaten anything and everything. I've never eaten a cicada. So grasshoppers, crickets, snakes, all the tarantulas, all the weird stuff, but never this. So.
Okay,
right, we're watching.
All right, so
the world is watching.
Let's see how we do this. So there's my cicada sauce. You see that, right?
Yes.
I'm just gonna grab this guy and oops. Ooh,
oh my goodness.
A lot of sauce.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
Well, now it's not alive anymore.
Maybe.
Hey.
Is it crunchy?
Real crunchy. You know what it tastes like?
Chick-fil-A sauce.
Chick-fil-A sauce.
Yeah.
Yep. That was delicious. I'd have that every day.
Well, enjoy it while you can. You have to wait 17 years.
How many did you grab? Just one?
Yeah, just one. I didn't want to overwhelm everyone. I'm sure people have already turned their face already. They probably.
What are you gonna eat next week?
Here you go.
Do you want to give a teaser?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, what could I eat? I don't know. Come up with something.
I challenge you to eat gefilte fish.
What is it?
Oh man, you've never heard of gefilte fish? I'm Jewish.
No.
I can tell you what it is. It's some kind of a sweet, stuffed fish. I don't even know what they put in it. You've never tasted that?
I have not. No.
Okay.
You'll have to send me some info on that.
That sounds good.
All right.
It doesn't. Anyway, I'll follow up now. And now I want to know what you will eat next week. Actually,
I'll have to think of something.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just. Yeah, I don't know. This could really get out of hand. People like eat a Tide Pod or something. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Don't let the crowd suggest.
I think it's up
Don't
to
do
Edward
that.
to top you. It's up to Edward to top your cicada, so you don't have to eat anything next week.
All right.
So
Well, he's somewhere on some remote island. I'm sure he can find something a little bit more exotic than a cicada.
sure.
Oh no, that's right. He's in a Mexican jail. I forgot.
Oh,
Right. He didn't do his cert. Yeah.
anything is more challenging than a cicada in a jail. Wherever that is.
All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Until next week.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure to be here with you.